Welcome to Through a Glass Darkly Radio on United Public Radio. And intro music was Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl Casey at White Bat Audio. I want to say tonight we have one of my favorite guests and one of the audience's favorite guests, Dr. David Morehouse. Dr. Morehouse is an international best-selling author, speaker, and educator. He served as a Special Operations Infantry officer in the United States Army, commanding the Army's only separate airborne rifle company, an airborne ranger company, and an interim airborne infantry battalion, which, and he can correct me when he gets on, I believe he signed over to, at the time, a Lieutenant Colonel Austin, who is now the country's Secretary of Defense. General officers and commanders at brigade and battalion levels identified him as a superior leader and consummate trainer of the soldiers serving with him in his units. During his military career, he served in 3 top-secret special access programs: the Intelligence Support Activity, ISA, codenamed Royal Cape, aka The Activity; the CIA DIA Remote Viewing Unit, codenamed Sunstreak, aka Stargate; a Strategic Deception Unit, codenamed Torn Image, as a counter-narcotics deception officer to disrupt the drug cartels in Colombia with a self-sustaining inter- and intra-cartel war. A decorated Cold War veteran, he brings unique perspectives gained from his military, scientific, and business experience to any audience, empowering teams and individuals to discover their untapped potential. Dr. Morehouse, David.
That was really nice. That was a nice introduction. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I had to mention there's a story behind the story behind the Austin thing. I did a little bit of ad-libbing on that one because it's pretty interesting. Okay. Before we get started, the main event, I believe we're talking a little bit about Beyond Skinwalker, right?
Yeah. There we are.
There's a bit of a development that came up on the Sean Ryan show, and I hope Sean Ryan watches this and shares it because
I'm pretty sure he does, because he and I have talked about it a couple times.
Oh, really? You should go on that. Well, yeah, it would make sense that he would talk to you because you were on Danny Jones's.
Sorry, podcast. my bad. It was Danny Jones, and I have talked about it several times. So I've not talked to Sean Ryan for some reason.
After this, he's probably going to want to talk to you. So
we'll see. Yeah.
All right. So let's just see if I can actually make this thing work.
I know the tech just keeps getting harder and harder.
All right. I think it's doing what I want it to do. All right. So I'm just going to play this and I want you to react to it.
No. Russ Targ and I completely agreed on this, that started with Ingo Swann. Ingo was, he told me once that I should not be his friend because he's a bitch on wheels, and that was an understatement. And he said, I hate flying out here to California to do your stupid experiments. Why? There's an office in New York City for SRI. Let me do the experiments there.
By the way, this is Edwin May. He, for a time, was the director of the Stargate program. He's being interviewed on the Sean Ryan show, I think earlier this week.
And Hal said, sure. And Ed and Russ Targ said, no. He's not a scientist. You need supervision on this. Hal said, no. And that started something we're paying deeply for even now, an Ingo Swann cult. That Ingo went there and trained. He was a brilliant guy, but he's not a scientist. And that started the Fort Meade people went up and were trained by all this guy, and almost none of them produced actionable.
Oh my God!
Shots fired! Shots fired!
Counter battery fire. What an arrogant ass! This guy has always been that. And let me just say this. I've told people this repeatedly. When you're in that unit, you have the opportunity to look at all the historical files. Not everybody did, but this yahoo did. And I read all the historical files. And I also spent a great deal of time in New York and talked with Ingo repeatedly. And I've said this repeatedly, and people kind of gloss over it, where, look, there were 3 deliverables out of all of this contract that were primary deliverables. One, first thing, can you prove scientifically that ESP, or a human ability to see distant in space-time, exists? 2, can you tell us who will be good at this and who will not be good at this, so that we can harvest clairvoyance from the population and give them a job in the CIA or DIA? And 3, can you replicate this and develop a training program so we can keep this moving perpetually, right? So those, you read through the contract, and I'm a damn contracting officer, and I'm a government contract, holder. I understand what government contracts mean, and I'm really good at discerning what the deliverables are in those contracts. And the first one, the first deliverable, can you prove scientifically? I've said this many, many times, thousands of times, if people have listened, that, yeah, they came back in a period of time and said, yes, we have proven that this ability exists in humanity, and our science is good and our data is good. And the CIA went, yep, thank you very much for that. But yeah, we're calling in 2 sets of auditors now to check your science and to check your data and to make sure that you actually are what you say you are doing. Because part of that is just the CIA being it, which is they're always keeping somebody between them and the problem, or a potential problem. So they bring in auditors, the SAIC, Paralabs, or whomever, there may have been some others that they brought in, but they ran through SRI International's data and their methodology and other stuff. And were there criticisms? Yes, there were. There were definitely criticisms about their science and their scientific method. It wasn't that their findings were inaccurate. It was just that their methodology, when peer reviewed, could be criticized. And being a scientist and looking at the criticism, I'm going to tell you, the criticism was valid. Okay. It had a lot to do with, their process of selecting targets and who they were studying, and, whether or not they were given wink, wink, hint, hint to stuff, and, but not directly, but just by using a latitude and longitudinal coordinate system, and then making all the targets that they were asking them to look at around in the San Francisco Bay Area, Stanford area in California. And they're scientists and they're smart guys, but they weren't smart enough to figure out that people might actually connect the latitude and the longitude to what they're asking them to look at in the San Francisco Bay and Stanford area, right? I mean, it's just ridiculous. So
it's not really a blind or double blind study.
No, it really wasn't. Right. So that was a criticism of it. And they, to my understanding, never really repaired that in any way, but they gave that deliverable to the agency. And so then they continued on with the sole source contract. The next deliverable was, can you tell us who will be good at this and who will not? Because we want to do what the Chinese and the Soviets were doing at the time, which is to go out and harvest that from our population, bring them in, school them and train them so that we have a consistency of intelligence product, and make that all happen for us. Because they were really worried, the CIA was, along with Gottlieb and others. They were really concerned about mind control and about harnessing some new mental ability to see distant in space-time and to penetrate, the Kremlin and figure out what what anybody was thinking in the Kremlin or meetings and those kinds of things. So they wanted to know. And they came back and said, now this, I will give them credit for as being quite courageous in saying it, because I can tell you that a big percentage of scientists that were watching or hearing or learning about the development of this would have easily jumped right on their backs and driven them into the ground for it if they could have. But they came back and said, well, we have concluded that this is not unique to any one individual. You don't have to have a heart attack or get shot in the helmet or, have some physical trauma, emotional trauma, or spiritual trauma to be able to do this. We're all born with it. Now, that's a powerful statement. It's inherent to every human being.
Ed May in that exact interview said the opposite of that. He said,
I'm sure he did, because
1%.
he's a dumbass that doesn't really know what he's talking about. This is a guy that, constantly is running around, opportunistic, trying to suck up some fame somewhere by being on some show. I told you after Psychic Warrior came out, everywhere I went, every television show, every radio show, everything else, this guy was standing out there in the shadows. He was going to be there in the interview next. But I think he could see that I didn't consider him to be more intelligent than myself. And I certainly know that he hasn't done the things in his life that I have done, albeit he's an accomplished man. And I have no axe to grind with the guy other than shut your mouth and stop talking about the people that have actually done the work, had put a uniform on every day and went in and did the work that was there. How dare you step back and say that none of the intelligence was actionable? I absolutely read the letters that came out of the DEA and other places that showed absolutely and positively that the intelligence was actionable. That's just an arrogant, ignorant, in fact, I'm going to go a step further, stupid, egotistical statement to make a statement like that about the people that served in that unit. Don't say that to me on a sidewalk on a street somewhere, okay? It's just, what a jackass to sit back in your pompous ass and say something like that. Now, Ingo Swann, because let me tell you what the third deliverable was. Can you replicate this? Can you develop a training program? He sits back and says, well, Ingo's not a scientist and he's not this. He may not be a scientist.
It's not relevant when you're talking about training, David.
Exactly. It's not relevant at all. But see, that's the whole point. The scientists,
in fact, it's a negative. It's a negative.
Exactly.
It means you don't want to get your hands
idea how to train this. First of all, none of them are professors. They're all just physicists or psychologists or psychiatrists, and they do research. Well, doing research is not doing training, especially not doing military intelligence training or military training. Task conditions, standards, performance-oriented training. So to sit there and make that smarmy claim like that, that just comes from an ignorant individual that thinks
how would he know? Did he have access to that kind of information or not?
I have no idea what his role was in this. I mean, I heard his name many times, and I know he had a position and he played a part in this. But what I do know is the reason Ingo Swann was hired by INSCOM in 78, 79 to train remote viewers is because SRI International had absolutely no idea how to do it. None. They could not put it together. That was a deliverable unmet. Okay. And it was a deliverable unmet that eventually probably led to them being disconnected from a sole source contract and losing funding. And because the agency and the DIA, they're looking for people that they can plug in. I mean, you answered two very important deliverables. Can you scientifically prove this is a human ability? Yes. Can you now tell us who is good at it? Yeah, well, anybody can be good at it if they will engage in the training process. They can be good at it. If they don't want to do that or they don't believe it, then stay on the sidelines. But if you believe it or you believe it could be true and you're curious about it, learn the protocol and then you can do it. Those are two big deliverables met. And I think that the CIA at that juncture was just kind of like, thank you very much. But the whole idea of these guys developing a military training protocol, a dogma, a protocol to train remote viewers to serve in the military, that was just laughable in my point. So here you've got a guy, sitting there back in the chair, pretending, all pompous and all knowing. And there's nothing omniscient about that guy, let me tell you, because he's clueless about why the plug got pulled on it all. He had absolutely no idea how to train people, which is why show me your accomplishments in training military personnel. Show me. I mean, I'll listen. We can compare notes. And it was one of the reasons why Ingo came in and did that. And I sat there and talked to Ingo. And Ingo used to say to me, he goes, Ed May And Russell Targ, I wanted to hit him in the head with a hammer every day. Now, that's just blustering by Ingo Swann, and I understand that. He didn't really mean he wanted to murder him.
He was a bit of a drama queen.
He was, very much so. Well, yeah, he absolutely was. And he never met a person he didn't hate on some level. But he also, when he wrote his true story, what was it? True story of remote viewing. If you read it very carefully, he speaks highly of Targ and Puthoff. I don't know that he speaks highly of May, but he speaks highly of Targ and Puthoff. And, you know, Ingo was kind of neutral on Puthoff, because I think Puthoff was more the leader of the group, of the science team, research team. Targ was not. But I find it almost comical that you now see these scientists, which truly they are, and they were involved in that research, but they were involved in research nearly 40 years ago now. They did not have any role in the daily operations of this organization. They didn't train individuals to be in this operation. They didn't select individuals to be in this operation. So popping off with some kind of comment like that, to me, I just find it unconscionable. I mean, truly unconscionable. And I would tell it right to his little face if I ever saw him. You know, you don't tell me that the work that was done in that organization was not actionable intelligence. The Sci-Ent organization was like anybody else if you look at it from the perspective of levels of accuracy. And I mean, you're an intelligence officer, you understand this. I mean, it's like there's not one intelligence collection methodology to even today that is 100% accurate. So while I will fault the unit with not having come up with rules, like saying it's not 100% accurate, never has been, never will be, and you never trust the results of a single remote viewer operating independently of other remote viewers, and remote viewing is not a standalone endeavor. It was always meant to be used in consonance with other, you know, intelligence collection methodologies. And now it could be investigative or diagnostic methodologies, but it's not a standalone, be all, you know, is all. And these guys favored a couple guys like Pat Price and some others, and then dismissed everybody else because they felt that they had found their favored psychic, that they were doing the things that they wanted to do. But what they were doing and what Pat Price was doing, or anybody that was in that realm, it was not what we're doing as military intelligence collectors. We're not looking for, you know, we're not looking for alien life on Mars or whatever else they had Pat Price doing. So they were really good. Every viewer there did their work. They did their work. They were trained. As shitty as the training was, it was really bad because Ingo Swann had taught some people, but Ingo made decisions based on how people were responding to what he was saying as to whether or not he would train them all the way. So guys like Paul Smith, free admits, I was only trained to stage 3. I don't know.
It sounds like he kept changing the stages too along the way. Ingo Swann.
Mildly, but only because what he was doing now was taking something he had developed as an artist in the Bowery of New York that he had developed for himself and others that were willing to listen and learn from him. But then when he was contracted or paid to teach, you know, members out of INSCOM who had self-proclaimed certain abilities and then had been selected for this training program, then to be operational intelligence collectors, he was doing what you would have to do now. He was modifying and changing the protocols to match what was required by the intelligence community, the military intelligence community. So Ingo didn't just sit back in the Bowery of New York and come up with a military intelligence collection protocol. He came up with a coordinate remote viewing protocol. But it would be like me taking the military intelligence collection protocol that we were trained in, and then taking it into a law enforcement investigative process. Certain things would have to be changed. The law enforcement would want certain elements of the structure changed to ask viewers to pull up different kinds of information. They may not be concerned about, colors and textures and temperatures and sounds and smells and dimensionals and energetics and aesthetics and intangibles and those kinds of things. So they may ask for different stuff, but that's all the role of the individual, which is exactly what Ingo Swann did, which was playing the role of a program manager, sitting down with an entity and saying, what is it that you really need us to do for you? And as Stubblebine's staff did that, General Stubblebine's staff did that, Ingo was tailoring the protocols to meet those objectives. So he trained some people only to stage 3. He always had 7 stages, but what those 7 stages contained, the data sensing, in other words, the sensory input, the questions a viewer would be asking themselves, like, what of this is here? That was being tailored based on the needs of the military intelligence community. And it could be tailored even further if they were just doing something, again, in counter narcotics. The information was coming in counter narcotics, would have been entirely different than what you were doing in just trying to determine, something on a battlefield front, which is one of the things that, in the forward edge of the battle area, which was what the original intent for some of this stuff was, coming through the 1st Earth Battalion and that kind of thing. They were talking about training military leaders to be capable of, sitting back, going into an altered state and seeing the battlefield before the battle had even unfolded. Now, some of your listeners may listen to that and go like, what the hell? I mean, you kidding me? No. I mean, if you read the research that was done on Colonel Boyd, John Boyd.
OODA loop.
The OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, and act. This is the guy that they called him 40-second John or 40-second Boyd, whatever the nickname was, because he could close on and kill an enemy pilot within 40 seconds. And when they tested him, when he did things where he was fighting air to air in simulations with his own guys actually flying, 40 seconds and he would get them. And if he couldn't get them in 40 seconds, he would pay them, and he never paid anybody. He had to pay them like $40, something stupid like that. But he never lost an air-to-air engagement, either to kill an enemy fighter or in a simulation, which computer simulations were not what they are now, but in a simulation or in a simulated air-to-air engagement. Never lost. Why? The Air Force was very interested in this. Why? Because he was seeing to the other side of the moment. He could project what was going to happen, and he would sense what the enemy pilot or even the guys in his own flight, in his own squadron were going to do. And he would observe it in his mind, orient his aircraft, make the decision to pull the trigger. Okay. Right. And that's what he would do. Observe, orient, decide, and act, pull the trigger. And enemy fighters flew into his gun target line. He wasn't chasing them around in the air. 40 seconds he did that. So
he got in their OODA loop. He got inside their OODA loop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can spin your OODA loop faster than theirs, you'll win every time. And he always did. So they were studying this stuff. But all of this stuff was evolving during that time. And people were studying this in enhanced human performance potentials, and they were developing it, and they were putting it forward where the rubber meets the road in the military. These guys weren't. I mean, guys like May and Targ and Puthoff, they weren't. So I find it really comical these days, to see like Targ at the Omega Institute going, I'm going to teach you how to be a remote viewer. Really? You're going to teach people how to be a remote viewer. First of all, you don't know stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And so what does his training amount to? I'm going to have you sit across from somebody else, and you have to identify what's in their pocket. Lint? I don't know. And, that's the training program he was coming up with. But these guys come out with the credentials of having been the founders of the
Laser-
Stanford Research Institute
laser
International.
physicists.
Yeah, so
PhD.
their creds are street creds that come from having been the guys that did that. But don't lose sight of the fact that these guys are scientists. They are academics. They were not trainers. They were not in the military. They didn't do the work that we did. And how dare somebody like May open his smart mouth and say that about the people that were there. He discredits. I don't care about him discrediting me. You're not going to discredit me. But I care about him discrediting all of the other people, you know, that were there. The deceased Gabrielle Pettengill, the deceased, you know, all my friends that were there. It just, Mel Riley, you know, and others that are deceased, others that are like circling the drain right now, who put a great deal of work into what they were doing there. Lynn Buchanan, Paul Smith, you know, it just, to me, that kind of pompous, smart ass kind of commentary that comes from these guys, it just makes me sick to my stomach to listen to it. It's why, you know, there's still a lot of warrior in me, despite the fact that I'm getting ready to turn 70 years of age. You know, it's like, if somebody ever walked up to me and said something like that, I'd punch him right in the fucking throat. You know, I just wouldn't. It would be like, how dare you discredit or discount what people were doing there? Oh, I never produced any actionable intelligence.
He wouldn't know actionable intelligence if it bit him on the ass. He's a physicist.
Exactly.
Right?
He
wouldn't even know action.
He wouldn't know actionable intelligence. He wasn't an intelligence officer. He was a physicist. Actionable intelligence? Really? You just throw that shit out there. What did you do? See, he may not be connecting the dots on the fact that when the CIA went in their Freedom of Information Act web portal and they put 27 some odd thousand documents out there, right? Ed may actually be ignorant enough to think that, oh, well, the CIA in that phase was actually becoming the Central Information Agency, and that they were just putting all the stuff, everything that had ever been done by the unit, they were putting it out there. And he's then reviewing those documents and going, well, there's nothing here that's actionable. I would certainly agree. The reason is because the Central Intelligence Agency is the intelligence agency. When their lips are moving, you need to understand that they're moving for a reason, and it is to coerce you into doing what it is they want you to do. Those 27,000 documents or pages of documents, that's probably 1/10 of what was actually developed by the unit. There's nothing in there about the counter narcotics work. There's nothing in there about Flight 800, 007, Cal 007. There's none of those things, none of the really big things that were successful things that were done. What they're looking at, what they released, are training documents.
Was he part of the effort? Was Ed May part of the effort to discredit the program when it was leaked in 1995?
I have
no idea. Was he part of that effort?
If he was, then he's even more of an ass than I thought he was. So,
well, I get the feeling that he's still hanging on to something like that, but I don't know.
All of them are still hanging on to that. I mean, all of them now, because after, you know, Psychic Warrior came out and it was now well known that the government was involved in this, and here it is, and here's what it was. And now every other person that was in that unit with me before or after has now written a book about their journey through that unit. These guys they're kind of like, well, hey, don't forget about us. You know, we were here first. Everybody should ask us a question, right? You should ask us a question. Well, you served your purpose. You know, you're a physicist. You were a science research team. You did what you did. You got criticized in some ways, but you did what you did. So now shut up and go find another research project, because you have no business talking about a military intelligence application of something that you didn't even develop. You proved that it was an ability, and you proved that everybody has the ability. Thank you. Now go away. Mow your lawn.
Good job.
You know, good job.
Yeah, go have a pizza party. Yay. Yeah. Good job. Pizza party. All right. All right. Now, what are we supposed to talk about today?
Oh God, I forgot already. You wind me up with this stuff, man.
I know.
It's good. This stuff is a surprise.
It's good radio. It's good radio in YouTube. Controversy. The 3 C's.
We were going to talk about Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Season 2, the Taos Ranch.
Oh, interesting.
Is that what we're going to do? We're going to do that now?
Yeah. I'll know when your slides pop up, but just remember we're on
how do I have to pop them up again? You have to tell me. Do I go back to present again?
Yep, present. Then you just go to window, you find your presentation, and then
share screen.
Select it, and then I'll pull it up. It'll pop up on my controls, and I'll bring it up.
Okay, share screen, window. And there we go. Share.
There we go. All right.
Okay, you got it? Is that better? Does that work better like that? Full screen now?
There we go. All right. You're up and running.
So just background on this. We first got this offer by History Channel for me to pull some remote viewers together to do Beyond Skinwalker Ranch in their first season. And we did it, and it was called Rocky Mountain Ranch. And of course, it was a new production company and new directors and producers and that kind of stuff. So they did well in their first season, and they used us in their first season for Rocky Mountain Ranch. But what they realized is, and I'm quoting from them, is the remote viewing team, which the first season was 70 people from 6 different countries, was produced more data than they could even figure out how to, slide it into the episode, because episodes have limited time, and they really want to try to mirror somewhat Skinwalker Ranch. And then now Beyond Skinwalker Ranch is going to a bunch of different places, but it still involves, Eric and Travis, and it's 2 new people there that are the hosts of the show, and Bustamante and Paul, and Andy Bustamante and Paul. And so when we were producing all this data, Travis was like, Jesus, do you have AI to sort all this stuff out? It was like, nope. We have a 4-person team going through all this crap and analyzing and plotting this stuff and doing all these things. And then I build the slides, and here I am smiling and briefing you. So what they did when they got their second season, they're smart, and they turned around and they said, we think we can tell some of these stories better than the first time we told them. That's smart, right? It's good thinking. If you're going to do it, then there may be some unanswered questions that you need to go back and address now. So we took the same data in season 2 for Rocky Mountain Ranch, and we just packaged it in a slightly different way, but the data was identical. We packaged it in a different way because they wanted, their feedback from their viewers was they wanted a little bit of this and a little bit of that and less of this and less of that. So then we get the tasking to go to a place called Taos Ranch, was in Taos, New Mexico. And I'm acting as program manager, and then I have the same team, but this next team was 20 people less and less countries involved in it, because it ended up needing, people just didn't have the time. And we tried to, we tried to, when you're doing a team of 50 or 70 people, that's a lot. And when it's spread out across the world, it takes time to pull this stuff together. And you're telling people to take time out of their lives to do this work, and to work multiple targets, multiple, and send all their data in. Then the data gets analyzed and, try to package. And then we're working, me and the close in team, home team, are working on the fact that we can't divulge anything back to the viewers. We can't say anything to them. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's science. Okay. That's how you do blind. You give them the coordinates for the target, and then you tell them how you want the data presented. Whether you're just going to ask them for like whatever kind of remote viewing session, whether they're going to do CRV, ERV, and you want this kind of data from it, or whether you tell them, that this is going to be a sensing mission, and I need you to sense on an X and a Y and a Z plane, and I'm going to assemble all those and plot those points. And I want you to take each one of those points and then give me stage 1, 2, and 3 data on those points, this gets complex, and it's thousands of pages of data from 50 or 70 viewers looking at this stuff. But I can't tell them anything about it. I can't show them what their final results are because I'm under the contract of not doing that by the production company, by History Channel.
Well, it's also the right way to do remote viewing.
Sure.
Too, right?
But that's the right way to do the remote viewing. But I mean, even after all their data is in, I do not have permission to talk about what they have done or explain to them where they did it. I can't say to them it's Taos Ranch in New Mexico.
They just have to wait until the episode airs, right?
Exactly.
Something like that. Yeah.
They have to wait until the episode airs because, television is so competitive now that they're very concerned about the fact that somebody gets wind of them doing something that the other guy is not doing, because then the other guy can spin up really fast and try to do something faster than they're doing it and maybe get theirs aired before the other. And it's really that competitive at this point. And I get that. And I'm not opposed to that. And I also think, just as you indicated, this is the right way to do it. You need to make sure that it's objective, and you need to make sure that it's blind and double blind. You need to make sure clearly it's not blind to me, but it is blind to the viewers, and even double blind to some of the viewers that are in other places that are really operating at the level of, yeah, I'll do it. Just give me the tasking, I'll do it. And I really don't care about anything else. You don't have to give me any feedback right now, right? Or anything else. So it works good under these conditions. Now, I'm going to say, when you start looking at some of these slides, because what you're looking at is the actual briefing that I give to Travis, Eric, and to Andy and Paul, and the director and the producer. This is the briefing I give them. And so we will sit there and I'll brief them. And then of course the total briefing goes to them once I'm finished doing it. I'll actually do it off air at first, off camera. And that takes several hours, and we do it because we talk about it, because it's a show and they're directors and producers. And so they're deciding, well, we want to talk about this and we don't want to talk about that. We like this part, we don't like that. Yeah, do this one and do this one. Is there anything else that's close to that? Yeah, we just didn't include it. Yeah, we'll include it. And so it goes like that. And it's all just part of the production process. And I get that. I understand it. And I have no problem with that. I'm very flexible with it because I understand what they're trying to do. And they can't just sit there and listen to, me talk about remote viewing for the whole time. I did that the very first time I was there, and their eyes were rolling back in their heads because I spent 3.5 hours on camera. I mean, they had to get new batteries.
Well, you made them run out of batteries, right?
They did. They ran out of batteries. Yeah. They ran out of batteries and they ran out of daylight. And I was still like, I'm not done. They had 3 cameras on me and I'm going through the thing, and they distill it all down to like maybe 60 seconds. It was pretty funny. Talking for 3.5 hours, and I'm going, I'm not done. You got to keep listening. I'm not going to stop till you all understand what I'm talking about here. And so now we've done 3 shows with them, and they've got their second season. And this show that we're going to talk about here, it was in the second season, and there are going to be more shows. I'm sure they're going to get more seasons. And I'm really hoping that they will continue to use the viewers, this viewing team, not some self-aggrandizing single viewer claiming that, I can solve this for you, right? That's not the intent here. The intent here is to use a team, because remember, as I said, remote viewing rule number 3 is that it's never a standalone endeavor. And this is a perfect example of it. They've got their investigative methodology, and then they have viewers now providing data to them. And it is not, you never trust the results of a single remote viewer operating independently of other remote viewers. You've got 50 remote viewers in this particular target, and 70 that were operating in the Rocky Mountain Ranch in season 1 and season 2. So this is good data that comes up here now. Now, there's a caveat in what I'm going to tell you, is that we ran into some issues in season 1. And those issues were quite simply this, that people were actively attempting to claim responsibility for sketches that were produced. So when you're analyzing data, what I need to say is, I don't care if you draw, and I'm making just a wild example here, a fireman wearing fireman boots and a fireman hat with a hose in their hand spraying water, or you draw it with facial features and color it all in and do that kind of stuff. Or if you draw a stick figure with a line up to stick arms and hands, and then something spewing out that you label as water, I couldn't care less. I don't care. Both are usable data, and it's up to the analysts and the individuals working with it to consider, which is better, or do they just combine them? In the television industry, the choice is going to be made for the most aesthetically pleasing and impactful, right? So they don't want stick figures as much as they want the one that somebody actually put a raincoat on and, colored it all in and wrote fire department on the back of it or something like that. I'm just making this up, right? Everybody understand, I'm making this example up. But some people are better sketch artists at what they are perceiving in their mind, what they perceive, that they detect, decode, and objectify. Some people, their objectification, meaning writing it down or sketching it, is better than other people. As a trainer of this, I couldn't care less. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the significance between the data gathered, whether it's, an artistic rendering or whether it's a stick figure. I get it. And I impress that upon my students because I love them for the work that they do, not whether or not they're a good sketch artist or not, right? So what we started running into is that some folk that were good sketch artists then were starting to lay claim to the fact that, well, that's my sketch and it made it on the show, and that's my sketch and it made it on the show. And then they're contacting the person who brought the show to that ranch and given their sketches and that kind of stuff over to that person to put into their book, those kinds of things. Hey, it's not my job to say you can't do that. It is my job as the program manager doing this to say, I consider that a violation of the ethics of which we engaged in this work. Okay. That we're not engaging in this work as a team of 70 people busting ass to get all this work done so that some people can get bragging rights out of it. So I had a conversation with the director and the producer, and I said, they were like, so what do you want to do with it? I said, there is a process called an aggregate composite sketch. So in other words, if I have, 5 stick figures of a firefighter with a hose, some with helmets on, some without a helmet on, and then I have artist renderings and maybe another artist rendering not as good as this one, which you guys would pick this one, but there are 15, 16, 30 other sketches that are the same thing. They're just done as a rendering by somebody who can't sketch like that. So we can do an aggregate composite sketch. And an aggregate composite sketch is something that was actually done in the unit occasionally when that kind of spread was out there. An aggregate composite sketch takes factors from all of the other sketches and combines it into one. That's an aggregate sketch, and it's composite. So it's done by somebody that actually has some artistic skill to present it, right? So when an analyst would look at it, they would go like, oh, I get this. And usually the guy who was selected to do that was Mel Riley, at least when I was there. So because he was an amazing artist who could, the stuff that he did was like something you could hang on your wall most of the time. His target sketches were things you could frame. And that's not an exaggeration.
Even his handwriting, it was like in the cartoon writing the comic book writing that they use in comic books.
Yeah.
Like it was unbelievable. Yeah.
He did these amazing certificates that and I remember it was Gee Whiz. I can't remember what the acronym stood for, but he did these amazing certificates that he gave to like Ed Dames and myself. And then he had one for him. They made one for Gabrielle Pettengale, probably made one for Lynn as well. But these were certificates that you could frame and hang on your wall that was just talking about the fact that you had been in this unit for this amount of time. And it was a grand enclave of wizards, something like that. Just crazy. It was, but it was beautiful. It was just a beautiful work of art. So Mel was occasionally asked to put together a composite aggregate sketch, and he was very, very good at it. So you could take something like, Paul Smith, who was trained at stage 3 only, as was Ed Dames. They were doing contour, textural sketches, that kind of stuff. Well, Mel Riley would take contour and textural sketches and combine them with other people's sketches that were more developed, shall we say, and then combine them into a composite aggregate sketch, which would be the sketch that would go forward. I mean, an analyst doesn't care that one person sketches the outline of a F-117 and another person sketches a wing of an F-117, and the other person, and 4 other people sketch an F-117 that's recognizable as an F-117. But one is trying to sketch the skin of it, and the other is, focusing on an engine, and the other is focusing on the lack of a recognizable vertical stabilizer, those kinds of things. So it's now all combined, and Fern was in charge of combining those. He would say, no, I want all of these pieces put together. Give me a complete composite aggregate picture. And Mel would do that. He was the guy that was asked to do that. So in this session, in this work that we did with Taos Ranch in season 2, we concluded this was what we were going to do, because I, number one, did not want people who did the work to feel like they were discounted in some way because they weren't a sketch artist. You understand? And I didn't want people who felt they were sketch artists running around beating their chests and bragging about the fact that their stuff made the show and nobody else's did. I'm that kind of guy. It's all about, in my book, we participate as a group, and everything that everybody does is valuable in terms of the data. There's only so much data that can be presented on a television show. But by gosh, everybody contributed to this, and everybody poured their heart into it. And everybody deserves to know that they played a role in that work. And that's the way I am about it. So the producers and the director agreed on this. They said, well, we'll take either. I go, nah, I know you won't, but you'll take these. And they were like, yep, we will. So here we go. We had 50 trained remote viewers from 3 countries were assembled and briefed on the task for this target. They had 2 options. They had to provide 4 sensed data points. Now, sensed data points on 3 different axes. X was the horizontal, meaning the surface of this target area. Y was the depth from orientation from south to north in it. And then Z was the vertical plane. And the vertical plane was going to go across the horizontal plane. So in other words, we were going to look at a certain depth, and we were going to come up sensing through the horizontal up to a height above the horizontal plane. So that's a total of 12 data points per viewer. Now, because we held this up right until the very last minute at the request of the director, they didn't want us to throw this out there like a month ahead of time.
So they let you go below ground this time.
They did last time. They just didn't want to talk about it. Yeah.
I thought you just did it last time. They told you not to do it and you just did it.
No, we did it below ground, but the issue was they didn't have the apparatus. They didn't have the method. They didn't have,
they didn't want Travis asking them to dig, basically.
Yeah, they didn't. Well, they didn't have the ability to do that. So they didn't have any way to look below ground, just like Skinwalker doesn't really either. I mean, they do to a certain extent, but they don't really have, because some of these.
The best they can do is like ground penetrating radar. And
right, which doesn't go far, It's like, it doesn't go far. It's at best 10 meters. Okay. And now they were claiming, oh, well, we're going to get something that goes deeper, but they didn't get anything that went deeper. So you have sensed points that are really deep, really deep, which came out, hundreds of feet deep, which is, if there's stuff underneath these things, it's not superficial, right? It's not 10 feet, or it's not 10 feet under the ground. It's 150 feet under the ground. And we're talking about the aquaplane that's under there. The aquifer. We're talking about caves and caverns, man-made or otherwise naturally occurring. And they're not 10 feet under the ground. They're deep. So that was just the conditions under which we were operating. So we gave them two options. You can just do the 12 data points and turn in those sheets, because we know that if you're going to do the other stuff, it's going to involve stage 1, 2, and 3 data, and you're going to have to do that and prepare summaries for all that, and that's a lot of pages. So 47 of the 50 viewers opted for option 2, which was, we're going to do it all. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it all. So you got stage 2 and 3 data coming in, which is verbal and visual sensory data for every point. So you do 12 points, you sense 12 points. You now have to, you sense point 1. I need stage 2 and stage 3 data for that point, which includes sketches and verbal sensory data. You do point number 2 on the horizontal axes. I need stage 2 and 3 data for it. So it increases the volume of work for the viewers significantly. And it also increases the volume of work for us that are analyzing it significantly. Regardless, those were the options. So out of the 50 viewers, 47 opted to do everything. And I think to be honest with you, after the 47 were involved in doing that, I'm fairly certain that the other 2 turned around and went, yeah, I wasn't going to do this, but here you go. So I got data from them as well on that. So what this looks like is, when it was 40 some odd viewers doing it, 42 viewers doing it, and you're doing 12 data points, that's 504 times 1.5 pages. So each viewer's producing, out of the 42 viewers, it's just in the data points, just the X, Y, and Z plane, it's 756 pages.
Mm-hmm.
It got crazy. So let's just get through these plotting sense points and stuff, and let's just look at what was developed here. So the 3D Cartesian axis plane, this is a combined model. So let me fire this up for you, and you can see it. This is just showing you all the Dow's points in this Cartesian box. This is showing you as it goes through there, it'll start moving now. I had to create this crazy thing and plot all of these. So blue is above ground, green is on the ground, and the black are sensed points below the ground. Okay. And you're probably thinking like, okay, where does this go? Well, that's a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, right? It's a cubic kilometer above, below, and on the surface of the ground. And it's just being rotated around so you can see what it looks like. It starts out being oriented to the north, and it's just now showing you what it looks like. Now, what is that telling you? You can see the green clusters. That's green clusters that are areas of
it's like
interest.
it's like what's the name of this curve? It's like 2 hyper hyperbolic. It's like a hyperbolic curve. Yeah. Am I right?
Yeah. You can
that
actually graph
there's
this.
some line of force that's like pushing things out.
Right. You're starting to see, you'll see columns that are coming up from the ground, clusters. These are clustering of data that come up. They cluster under the green clusters, and then they disperse vertically on an arc. And that can actually be, those planes can be mapped. I greatly exceeded the capacity of my ability to develop this particular thing and trying to make that happen. But the whole idea here was to be able to show these guys, check this out. You know, this is what 50 viewers produced in terms of data. Now, to be sure, there were some outliers. There were some outliers that I couldn't really even get on the grid, but not very many. Like maybe on all the dowsed points, or sensed points rather, there may be like 20, 25 points that were like off the chart, like outside the grid. So now this one shows you what the primary target was. So this is a funny thing. So we started this off doing this whole grid, you know, which is a kilometer that, you know, a kilometer north, a kilometer east-west, a kilometer south, and a kilometer east-west again. And we did the whole thing because that's actually the whole ranch. But then a determination was made by the staff, production staff, which was, it's too much stuff. We can't go out that far. We need to confine it to a particular area on the map. And we want to do a quarter of the map, which is around the primary target structures, which were the actual buildings of this particular site. So the data was slightly modified to exclude the other 3 quadrants and only utilize the one that was around the primary target structures. So this is how this is developed. This was originally the primary here on the left. This was originally, 1.6 kilometers. I said 1 point, I apologize, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6. That whole area.
1 square mile. It was 1 square mile.
And right here, exactly. And right here is a cluster of structures, which were the primary structures. But the viewers were picking up on stuff in all, 4 quadrants, like hot zones, areas of interest in all 4 quadrants. So here's an example of like an X plane, the X plane that they were asked to now sense targets. So they go 1, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. That's just giving you an example. Then I put a grid over the top of that. And based on that grid, I now know how to plot that on the 3D axis plane plot and then create the 3D model from it. So that was it to begin with. And then they wanted to boil it down to a smaller place. But let me just show you the reveal on this. See if this, okay. So now watch this. It should, oh, here we go. Yeah, it's going to show you, it's going to show a map fade. So there's the map on the ground. And now you're going to see where all the viewers sensed points on the surface. See the clustering?
Mm-hmm.
Different, right? It's pretty cool. So now the production crew is like, yeah, we don't want to mess with all this stuff out here. We want to mess with this right in here. We just want to mess with this. So we're like, oh, okay. So it looks like that now. We took 1/4 of the data and put it down there, which if you're thinking about it, it makes sense. I mean, they only have a certain amount of time. It's not a show about remote viewers. It's not a remote viewing show, right? So we're just plugging in a certain area. These guys are doing exactly what they're supposed to do as directors and producers, So they edited it down and said, no, we only want this piece because that's where all the hot zone buildings are. So now all the data is already in. All I needed to do at this point is get with the team and pare it down, not to include the stuff in these other 3 quadrants. So that was fun because we're doing it on the fly while we're there. So this is me just explaining to the production team about these sketches, enhanced, sketches. These are composite enhanced sketches. So here are visual pieces of data, and we're going to get into.
That is creepy. That is creepy, Dave.
Isn't it? Yeah. Now this is I got to say this. So first of all, as one of the producers said, he goes, this is not a ghost show. This is about, aliens and extraterrestrials and other stuff. And I went, I don't care. It's like, if the viewers are producing this is what I'm going to give you. If you're going to use it, okay, good. If you're not going to use it, then don't use it. But I can't tailor what I'm giving you from the viewers to make it fit your objective on this. I'm going to give you it all, right? So in this composite, this aggregate composite, one of the biggest things that came out of this from the viewers is, this is not an ET site. This is not like some extraterrestrial thing. This is a haunted, evil, dark site. Okay. There's something really creepy here. First of all, this particular area has the highest radon gas content of anywhere in the world. Certainly anywhere in North America. So I told that to the producer and the director. I said, hey, this thing is like 9 point something, and the average in America is something like 1.4 or something. I could be wrong on that, folks, but it's like 5 times higher than the national average and radon gas. And they have plutonium mines all over the place around there.
Yeah, I was going to say, usually with this radar gas, that means there's usually uranium mines.
Uranium mines, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You have to enrich it, okay, for plutonium. But it is also an ancient area that has been disputed both by, it goes back to this idea of, did the white man come in and overrun the indigenous peoples and overpower them and kill them? Okay, put a pin in that thought for a moment. Now let's back it up to 12,000 years ago. Let's even go further back. The indigenous tribes that existed in this area were indigenous tribes that had survived because of their power and their ability to take from other tribes whatever it is that they needed to take, oftentimes women, so that they could thicken the gene pool, because they couldn't just have a tribe that just intermarried, because pretty soon, in 100 years or less, you would suddenly have an ancestral gene pool, which would not work. So they were doing this. They were powerful. They were powerful warriors. The more strength that they had, the further out they went, and they survived by conquering other lesser tribes, or nations, to take them and bring them here. So when we came in, you could look at it that way, or you can call us bad guys. But the point here is that for thousands of years, the ground in this place was soaked in blood, in blood. They have found pits of bodies in the Dakotas and others that are 600 bodies, all of them killed by being clubbed to death or something, men, women, and children, meaning not from white men. We weren't even on the continent at that time. These are from indigenous tribes, powerful indigenous tribes taking over other indigenous tribes, their territory, their gene, whatever it is they needed to do. In this place, everybody wants to talk about the Spanish conquistadors, and the battles, the Pueblo uprising and that kind of stuff, which I get it. I mean, I get it. It's part of the history of this place. But what the viewers were sensing, at least in the way they were writing things and describing this stuff, is it went way past that point. But this thing has a dark place, a dark energy hanging over it. And it's evil. It is an energy brought about, in my opinion, from centuries, if not millennia, of just war and of death.
I'm going to ask you a random question, and this came up in a prior interview. Is there any have there been any sightings of like the white lady, like stuff like that? La Llorona is kind of like a New Mexico. Yeah.
No, that would be more along in the Spanish occupation of it. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. This,
Keep going.
I think most of what we're looking at here, although you're going to see some sketches that counter what I'm saying, but I think most of what we're looking at here is considerably older than the occupation of the conquistadors. Like what? It's like 600 years, or yeah. Was it 600 years ago? No, I'm wrong. Can't remember.
500
plus years ago. There you go.
Yeah.
So in this sketch, you have viewers, we're sketching these guys with helmets and with clearly Spanish weaponry and with indigenous people laying everywhere in this valley. You can see the feathered lance, you can, and the clubs that were used, and you can see the conquistadors in their armor and other stuff. Remember, again, these are composite aggregates, but they're not fabrications. So multiple viewers sketched individuals in helmets with this kind of weaponry, and others, sketched stick figures or variations in between, or some just provided verbal sensory data reflecting these kinds of things. So this was combined to create the image based on that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a depiction of just a flow of energy. So there's high ground that's to the north of these structures, and to the north and to the east and the west of these structures. And the further outside, even the 1.6 kilometers, the 1 mile square, you go, it goes back up to high ground again. But viewers were depicting this flow, this rapid flow of a concentration of energy that was moving through from high ground to low ground. And it was destructive and dangerous and frightening. So it was dark energy moving through these structures. This was, out of the 50 viewers, there were 30 some odd viewers that described verbally or depicted visually a metal bed with a body laying in the bed. And I didn't know this at all. I didn't know anything about the inhabitants of this place until I gave the briefing to the production team, and they said the wife of the guy that owned this place found him in bed dead after a big portion of time. In other words, they were now separated or divorced, and she lived in one place and he lived in another. And she came up there because she couldn't get in touch with him, and he was dead in the bed and had been there for a long time. So therefore, decomposing in the bed in the New Mexico, heat, because it was just bad. So this is that depiction of that. I don't know if they used it in the show. I haven't watched the show, but this was pretty eerie to see that. Frozen in time, creepy. Confused, misguided, right? Wants a respite, an end, a rest, a silence. Here again, people are AOLing, analytical overlay. A bunch of viewers were drawing like cavernous cinder cones. I mean, the cinder cone is an analytic overlay because you're calling it a cinder cone. I don't even know if there were volcanoes in the area or not. I'm just capturing what the viewers came up with, 500 to 1,000 feet below the ground. So if this happened, 50,000 years ago or 40,000 years ago, or something like that, it could very easily be that depth underground, because the lava tubes, right, or cinder cones, the lava tubes with these cinder cones could have been that way 40,000 years ago. And now there are these huge lava tubes that are now empty, cavernous things. And these cinder cones have spewed lava out, and the ground has built up over 40,000 years or 100,000 years, and that would put them there. So, but the viewers were picking up on these things, 500 to 1,000 feet below, and saying water flows in them. Now, this is another, interpretation. It came from multiple viewers, is that there's a dark evil, a binding evil in this place. And there's no escaping the wars, the battles, the hatred and competition for power and dominion. Now, I had some of the female viewers, a couple of them that I really love and trust their connection with this work, that just, that just emailed me and said, I'm really having trouble with this, because This is not fun. This is not one you're like
dark.
looking.
This
One feels really, tarry and sticky, and it's ugly and it's dark. So I don't know what that is, but it looks like an indigenous rising up out of the ground with a weapon.
Yeah, or just wading through blood or something.
Yeah. I think I was told that they did use this one. This is a torn sky portal over the ranch itself. 31 remote viewers sketched portals. And this is one of the more significant imageries, a tear in the night sky with defined edges. 9 viewers out of the 50 sketched this brilliant white light exiting the portal, leaving like translucent waves of energy. You know what they're calling these now in cosmology? That when you're seeing these translucent waves, well, they're also referring to it in just what spins off of a galaxy. They're calling it spaghettification.
Oh yeah, if you were to stick a biological organism through a black hole, it would spaghettify. Like gravity would just rip it apart.
Yeah, but they're also calling it like as the galaxies are spinning, and there are stuff trailing off the galaxies, which it's the whole dark matter, right? Not dark energy, but dark matter theory, and that they're discussing. But as there are planets and matter spinning off of the galaxies that are spinning, they call that as well spaghettification. It's they're spaghettiing out off of the tentacles of the galaxies.
I heard that, I think, when I was in like grammar school. That's what they call it. Yeah, when you get ripped apart in the black hole. Yeah.
Well, that's why because you're 30 and I'm 70.
I'm not. That's very generous. You're about close to 20 years off on my end.
Okay, so this flying light described as illuminating the entire target, the area brighter than the full moon, but they described night shadows and like trees and building and unseen things that felt and looked surreal to them. This is starting to sound to me like the sons of darkness and the sons of lightness. Starting to sound something like Scroll Wars or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Here's another depiction of it. 31 viewers sketch visual images of portals over the structures again, near low mountains or hilly terrain. Viewers describing the high ground around the structures as scrubby with low tree growth. Viewers described 3 major portals over the target structures, with the largest and strongest over the main cluster of structures, which was the main ranch area there. Described as the portals, this is cool. Portals described as opening and closing sporadically, meaning not continuously open, with traffic as energetic and hypersonic vehicular movement between them, or existing into our atmosphere, or exiting into our atmosphere and then later returning back to the portals. So again, that's just their perceptions. Energy flows up and out and around the structures and goes around various locations.
There's that hyperbolic curves, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Seeing stuff coming up from the bottom, moving through the ground sensed areas, and then moving up into the air.
I mean, if you rotated it, in 3 dimensions, right, it would be an hourglass, or like two cones. Right?
It would be like tornadoes, like tornado cones. You're going to see that in a bit here. Okay. This
almost like an Einstein-Rosen bridge, right?
Yes. Eagle and wolf. And I saw this as highly, what's the best word for this? Interpretive, because there were multiple like radioactive symbols drawn there. And I think this is a radioactive symbol. Although it's broken but you've got an eagle and you've got a wolf and you've got the radioactive symbol, which I just saw it highly interpretive and I threw it in there. I know they didn't put it in there.
Yeah. There's radon, right? There's radon
all over the place.
There's uranium mines.
They were frightened enough of this place that they actually brought a shaman out to do a blessing on the crew. That probably didn't make it into the show, but you heard it from me. They brought a shaman out to do a blessing on the crew because they were creeped out by this place. I didn't know that until, when I went there to brief them. This is somebody drawing the water, bunches of people drawing the water. This one doesn't say how many people saw it, but you can see the stalactites, stalagmites are underwater. Viewers were saying rather that it has accompanies with very low hum. And in this next image, this shows, this is a depiction of what the viewers were actually describing verbally and visually. That was the hum that they were seeing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Seeing that kind of a waveform. So this was just put in there for for production crew to see it. They didn't use it, but this was the best way I could.
Is this to explain the famous Taos hum?
I don't know what the name of the hum is there, but viewers were describing a hum in that area.
There's something called the Taos hum. Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to go into some map fades. This is showing a map fade with all of the axes involved in this. And I have to trigger it here. And this is over the primary target. You notice that the other quadrants have now been removed. So now you can just see the primary target area, which is right over the structures, what that looks like. Now, the stuff below the primary structures there are definite clusters there, but the stuff just spaghettifies pretty deep, doesn't it? Right? Mm-hmm. It was really deep down there. But look at the stuff up top, above the structures. Now, the cool thing about this was they were like, now we know where to shoot rockets. And that was what Travis said as well.
It always gets back to rockets. It always comes back to rockets.
Now we know where to shoot some rockets. Yeah. And I thought that's good. So does this one do the map fade or is it?
What do they do? Shoot it right through the center of the
Well, I'm going to show you what we gave them.
Rosa Bridge. Yeah.
I'm going to show you what we gave them. I don't actually know if they did it because there are always restrictions that they have to deal with. Like can't shoot it this way, can't shoot it that way. Rocket can't go up farther than this. There are things
this looks like the outer edge of like a wormhole, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Those two cones.
Now this is just going to show you what takes place right in here, right? So now you're seeing the whole thing. You're seeing just the aggregate of all of them pulled together there without seeing it in 3D. And then we'll go to the next one, next map fade here. So here's the next one. And this is just showing mostly the aerial axis and the ground axis. And we did this because they were asking for the aerial and the ground axes. They wanted to be able to see them independently and kind of isolate the sensed points as they needed to decide what they were going to do. I can't tell you how much work went into that, plotting that like that. It was just completely nuts.
What program did you use? What software program?
I started with math something, and then I
MATLAB.
What's that?
MATLAB.
Something like that.
Mathematica.
And I outran its capabilities, and so after I outran its capabilities, I had to go to another thing that was a little bit slightly programmable. I can't remember what it was. I want to say Math 3D or Plot 3D, something like that. The math, whatever the one was that I started with, it wasn't designed to capture this many data points. Okay, let's go to the next map. This is just subsurface, so it's going to do the same thing we did in the other one where we were looking at the above ground. This one's going to show you the x-axis or the surface plot, and it's going to then show you, it's going to move and show you what's below it. Plus, you can see the clustering there.
Mhm.
Not as, I mean, it's interesting, the clustering below the structures of these sense points, but they are very limited in what they can do. If you understand each one of those grid squares is like 100 feet or more, it's it's more than 100 feet. It's very difficult for them to, contemplate what are they going to do with it, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot they can do. They don't have the budget or the equipment or things like that to do stuff with that. And this is the same thing, just showing you where it relates to in terms of the target itself as it goes through this map fade. You can see very definitely there are clusters here, cluster here. There's a weird cluster down here, right?
Yeah.
There's at least 3 points or maybe 4 points of concentration there. So here's what we did was I paused this and put a protractor on there and said, and Andy Bustamonte's like, well, so, and I looked at him and I said, well, once a mortar platoon leader, always a mortar platoon leader. So, but these things are too high for they can't shoot these things up, over 2,000 feet.
Mhm.
So, but there are definitely clusters, cluster 1 and cluster 2. So I'm sure that they went at 500 meters and they may have gone at 700 meters, but it gave them, their elevation. And then if you look at the next one, we actually gave them a deflection for these.
I'm sure Travis was salivating over this stuff.
I think he was pretty happy about it. Yeah. It was, because this was the beauty of this whole thing, was to be able to say that, look, you can just go out and shoot it up based on where the person on the ground there goes, I don't know, maybe up this way, or based on the data provided by the viewers in all of these sense points. Here's an elevation and a deflection at your choice. I don't know what their parameters are or the restrictions are in the area. I just know that they're always there. I mean, there are other people live around there, right? So they can't just go launch a rocket up into something that flies over somebody's house and then comes down and goes through the roof and lands in the living room. I don't know if that was a restriction or something that they had to deal with here, but I just know that they have to deal with that stuff. So me giving them this information.
Why didn't they just use drones?
They do. They have done that as well. They've done that as well, but they it's because it's entertainment. They're looking for not only the science behind it, but they're looking for, visual representations of things that are odd, that are unexplained, in the process of this. So when a rocket goes up and looks like it, hits something and veers, well, that's visual data that they want to show the viewers. If they're, send a drone up and then the drone goes up and then veers off crazily and doesn't come back down, or, ends up a mile away or something, that's good as well. So they're trying, I'm sure, replicate in their experimentation. They're trying to get duplicates of things that are happening so they can stand there and say, like, that shouldn't happen. But I think the beauty of involving the viewers in this is from my perspective, is it's giving them information about things that are going on there that are things that their instrumentation cannot provide, which is, rule number 3. Remote viewing was never intended to be a standalone endeavor. It was always intended to work, right, in consonance with other investigative methodologies. You're seeing that here, right? Now, this is, I think, just a 3D axis rotation, the whole thing. Yeah. Oh, it's just the x-axis. Okay. So this is just the x-axis showing you what was on the surface. I thought that, this was all the work done by the viewers. I thought that this was just really a good representation of their efforts. I was really happy to be able to do this. I need to find a better, faster, plot program. It allows me to do this faster.
Are you doing this for any of the other episodes?
Yeah. This
How
will be
many?
for every episode from this point forward that we do.
Oh, wow. I'm not going to ask you where because you won't obviously be able to talk about it.
Yeah. But I'll tell you as soon as it's done, so as soon as we've done it. But we'll do this for every episode from this point forward. So this is just that map fade again I'm doing of the X and the ZB, which is below. This is showing the total target, not just the one. Remember, they just wanted us to focus here, but that's showing. Look at all these other clusters. They were just unable to spend the time to go out and investigate those. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of data points when you start to look at that. Now imagine that all the stage 2 and stage 3 data that accompanied every one of those points. That's a lot. Yeah. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. It's so much stuff. And, nobody's compensated to do this, which I love. Nobody's compensated to do this. This is just supporting the project to do this.
Do they get credit though in the credits of the show?
I doubt it. You mean like an IMDb thing?
Yeah.
I have not even seen one of the shows, so I couldn't tell you. I've never looked at the show, so I don't know. I'm just doing the work, man. Just doing the work. Okay, this is the total target again, showing you all the clustering below the stuff that was sensed on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just nice to rotate it around to get different perspectives on it, right? I do love that about the app. It allowed me to do this. But I'm not, I like the below ground stuff, but I recognize the limitations there. It's impossible to verify, really. I know here that they actually did bring in some ground penetrating radar. I was told that they did that, or they were going to do it. But I also know the limitations of ground penetrating radar. I know there's some stuff that can go really deep, but I don't think the show has the budget to do something like that. That would have to be like way outside the realm of possibility for it, especially in this day and age, right? Is that the same thing? Oh, okay. We're just doing this is just showing that same thing in a map fade now. That is, again, lots of work. This is just the X and the ZA, which is the above ground level. ZB is below ground level. The Y plane is the depth, from south to north in it.
Yeah, it looks like it has that vortex, like hyperbolic
all 4
vortex
points,
kind of feel.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Just going back to the terrain again. All right. I think this is the combined map fade. Let's see. Everything. X, Y, and Z. Yeah, this is just going to show the full thing. Again, just in larger scale. All of this is provided to them and it goes to their editing team, and then they decide, what they can use or what they can't use. And just think about, again, all those points, all those dots have pages of verbal and visual sensory data with them. A lot of work by those viewers, a lot of work by them. Verbal sensory data, really not important here at this point. The taste, sounds, smells, sounds, energetics, contours, dimensionals, intangibles, emotional data, aesthetic data. I'll just read some of it here. This place carries a heavy weight on so many levels. There's a stain of an ancient evil here, an absolute oppressive air and energy swirls around this place. I sense lost souls wandering here, old souls who cannot move forward into peace of any kind. They're somehow not physically whole. I feel an indigenous presence, a presence filled with intergroup or tribal warfare and conflict, a prehistoric hatred that existed long before the arrival of outsiders, parentheses, Europeans. I'm sensing high desert, sparse vegetation, and I estimate the time to be approximately 1000 AD. There are fortifications nearby. The landscape is littered with ruins of all ages. What were they afraid of? There's so much fear in everything. I'm sensing a very significant, a very long event arc of time, millennia, pocked by violence, hatred, abandonment, environmental fluctuations, massive economic shifts are causing an instability of resources and escalate into human competition fueled by greed, hunger, war, ignorance. It was as horrible then as I sense the world is now, just thinner. Not sure what that meant, but this is paranormal, not extraterrestrial. This is what I led with in talking with them. The viewers felt that this is paranormal, not extraterrestrial. What keeps this energy here is not explained. It is evident to me the entire area is haunted, and I've never sensed, perceived, or stated that before. That's true. And any of the other things we did for Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, nobody said that kind of stuff. So skulls in the sand, flesh taken. There you go, right? This was war by every means and for every reason, belief, culture, flag, territory, wealth, and greed. This was not just survival. It was dominance transforming into a law and punishment. I think this is the final one. I'm confused. In one moment, I perceived indigenous people existing in harmony. And in the next moment, the same humanity is engaged in a destructive phase, expressing with murder and mutilation. And the next, I feel like I'm watching a civil war battle sliding around, and I can see modern weapons and stone weapons and everything in between. This is a crazy place to be. Who'd live here? Oh, it just keeps on going and keeps. So these are just their verbal sensory data, right? And 24, and then that was it. End of report, man.
Wow. Good Lord.
Cool.
So, yeah, so the key takeaway is it's basically a land soaked in blood with like a pretty dark resonant energy.
Which is probably true of a lot of places in North America, right? Certainly in South and North America. Why do we think it all just happened like in the last 500 years, or 100 years?
Because only white men do bad things, apparently.
There you go.
Yeah. I say that sarcastically for people
I
listening.
know you do. And I mean, but it's truth. It has to be. We have to be willing to understand that, that evil and greed and murder and slavery and all those things existed long before Europeans showed up on the coast here.
Yeah, humanity has a dark side.
And we all do. Yes, we do. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, we really do.
What's next to this extent that you can talk about? What's next?
I am sure they're getting a season 3, and hopefully, if the season 3, I would really like to. I want to keep the viewers doing this because I think it really speaks well for their contribution to it, and I think it also is, as I've said before, rather than just having somebody go, well, that's really weird. I don't understand that. I think it's nice.
Shoot more rockets. Let's shoot more.
I think it's nice to have these. Not just somebody's opinion about it. I mean, not just one person saying, well, I think this or I think that, but having 50, 60, 70. I would really like to have 100, 100 or 200 viewers producing this data and pulling it all together.
Now, did you train all these viewers? Were all these viewers former students of yours?
They're all former students of mine, and I won't take anybody else. And the reason I won't take them is because then it gets into this competitive vein of somebody trying to show that they're better than everybody else, which I just refuse to accept and won't tolerate. And I also want consistency in the intelligence data, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want consistency in the data. I mean, what I mean by that, consistency in the format of the data. I don't want somebody, coming back to me and saying, well, I think there's blue at the site. What? I want you to understand what I'm asking you to do, and you won't do that unless I taught you to do that. And I know that I'll probably piss some people off, and I'm sorry about that, but that's just the way that's going to be.
So how can former students who want to participate?
Go to www.davidmorehouse.org, not .com. I don't have anything to do with a .com website. I don't endorse it. I have nothing. I don't own it. It's not part of my life. Okay. Don't sign up for a course there, because if you do, it's not going to be taught by me. It's going to be taught by somebody's edited recording of me. So it's www.davidmorehouse.org. Okay.
Is that right? Did I get it right down below?
Yeah, that's it. And you can also go to team, TEAM, at davidmorehouse.org. And somebody from the team will send you an email back from there. You can go to davidmorehouse.org, the website, and say, go to there are various things there you can tap on, and you can say, it's like, I want to interview, or I want to say this, or I want to do that, or I want to do something. And you just say, I want to be on the team next time. And I was trained, because they will vet you. The team will go back and say, like, okay, when were you trained? And they'll look back through all the student records to determine that. Or you can just send the email and say, hey, I want to be on the next team. If you've not been trained in how to sense, points on that, I'll have to take the people that haven't done that and put them through it's a fairly short course, but you don't have to pay for it. It's just a fairly short advanced technique course. And we did that.
Where did you learn that technique? Is that something you developed?
In the unit. In the unit.
Okay.
It was called map sensing or map dowsing in the unit. And there are 3 different ways you can do it. And so I have always, in the advanced techniques class that I teach to viewers that are my students, I will always teach them those techniques. And then we've done some pretty fantastic things, like in the blind, track the flight of an aircraft, or in the blind. I had them one time sensing the route in the blind. Remember, they just get a blank piece of paper and they have to sense 4 points on a blank piece of paper that I then put over a 1/50,000th map. And I have had them track. 2 that just come to mind is the flight of TWA 800. I had them track Shackleton's the Shackleton's landing point and the spin of the ice where the ship went. We did that one time.
Elephant Island and like all those.
Yeah. I was always intrigued by that. I also
that was an unbelievable expedition, by the way. He didn't achieve any of his original objectives, but everybody survived.
No. And in open rowboats, with canvas covering the top and 80-foot swells, 80-foot seas.
Eating their shoes. Yeah.
You couldn't eat your shoes now. They're all made in China,
But back then they were made of leather, right? So
I know.
I don't even know.
That was the joke. You can't eat shoes now. They're made out of plastic, recycled tires, and water bottles. But that was it. That was what we did, my friend. It was a lot of work. That was a couple of weeks worth of work for, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes worth of on the show, maybe.
Well, at least it's on the show now. I mean,
yeah, it is.
The first season, it was just kind of like, here's an extra thing because we had to show more rockets. So what did they use the rockets for after you did all this stuff? What were they trying to find?
I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen the show, but I did see the Rocketeers there. I saw them there. They were in the production office. And I purposely you know, I just don't want to be an ass when I'm there. You know, I want to stay where I'm supposed to be where they tell me to be, talk about what they taught me to talk about. And I don't want to be in their hair. You know, I don't want to go to into the production office. I don't want to stand around in a production office and chit chat and other things, because I think it corrupts what I'm there for. So I stay in the hotel room until they tell me to be somewhere, you know, and I don't go eat meals with them. I don't do anything with them. I stay where I am, do what I'm supposed to do or do what I'm told to do. And I show up when they tell me to show up. And then I present the briefings, exactly what I just showed you. And I stay away from it because I don't want to be accused of some sort of bias or some sort of front loading that I then pass on to the viewers or those kinds of things. I just want to stay. And I think I'm just putting words in their mouth. I think they appreciate that, because I think there are other folks that are there that are involved in these things, like people that, you know, are part of the site or something like that, that they just want to be in there and they want to figure out what they're doing and how they're doing it. And they want to give them 2 cents worth and stuff. I don't want to do that. I just want to be a tool, and I want the viewers to be a tool. And I'm just a program manager. And I just ask them, what do you want? You know, how do you need it? You know, et cetera. And then my job is to sterilize that and then go back and present it to the viewers and give them as sterile, as blind of a function that I can ask them to do, of the work that I can ask them to do. And I know that people, they're all really, really good people, dedicated and devoted. And I know, like, the first time after we did the work, I probably said too much to them. And what I mean by that is I said, you know, I gave them the briefing that I gave the production team, and I regret that. And I regret it for this reason, because that's the thing I think that lit the fuse on some of the people that then went, oh, you know, and then they started contacting people, like the person that was writing the book about the thing, and, you know, that kind of thing, and back and forth. And that's why I didn't do it this time. So now this time, since I've given the briefing here and they've already aired the show, now, you know, if the viewers on this team want to do that, we'll bring everybody back onto Thinkific. Thinkific is the platform we use to kind of assemble and do this one, which I really like. And I'll give them the same briefing, or I can just steer them all to your show. You know? That'd be better. Better yet, steer them all to your show. So I have another show coming up. I can't talk about it. It's not with these guys, but it's with another set of folks. And that's coming up. And I am hoping that we'll do more History Channel stuff, and they'll keep with us. I know that they love the product, and I know, you know, that they have said that we just never in our life expected we would get this much stuff out of this. Never. It was just originally just going to be some novel approach to something, but now, holy shit, you know?
Well, because the Central Information Agency told them that it didn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I know it's not Central Information.
Sure, Ed May probably emailed him his phone number.
There's nothing actionable here, David. There's nothing
actionable. No.
They just had.
And it's all Ingo Swan's fault, because he wasn't.
Yeah, they just had people producing nothing actionable for 20 years and spent, you know, far exceeding $20
because they
million
weren't scientists,
right?
Because scientists produced actionable intelligence. Sure, they do.
Yeah, they didn't do the null hypothesis testing on whether or not the Soviets had missiles in, you know.
I know. It's funny, man. Hey, Gary. I see Gary there. I see Mari too. And I see them up there in the comments.
I see Mari, which is Timepiece Adventures, Gary?
Yes.
Okay. I'm pretty good.
Those were two of the viewers that were on this. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Mari and Gary.
Did you show? Well, I mean, I guess it's up to you if you want to. Did you show any of their stuff, or was it more verbal data?
I can tell you this, that Mari was the first one that contacted me in an email. It said, this place is really creepy. It's very dark and it's really uneasy and I'm not having a good time with this one. And she was one of the first that came up with that, if not the first person that came back up with that. But
yeah. So Gary's saying it's the first time seeing this.
Yeah, it's the first time all of them saw this. It's the first time they've seen this briefing. Like I said, I thought it was a mistake. When we did the first season, Rocky Mountain Ranch, because I know everybody was like chomping at the bit and wanted to, see what the product was and what I briefed on. And so I did that. And then I showed pictures and showed their sketches and the pictures that were taken at the site and stuff like that. And we had a meeting with the production team because I was a little bit kerfuffled about the idea that people were corresponding with the individual that was, that announced the person that was actually affiliated with the ranch that was there in Colorado was writing a book. And then that person ended up starting getting contacted by remote viewers. Right. And I did not want that to happen. I didn't want that to happen. But how
did they get the information? How did they get the
information? It's not hard, believe me. Once I think the faux pas was on my part, and that was to turn around because I trusted everybody that if I turned around and said, okay, well, here's the briefing. Okay. Here's what I gave to Travis, Eric, and to Bustamante and Paul, to Andy and to Paul. I can always remember the Bustamante part. It's the Andy part I forget all the time. I said, I gave it to all four of them and to the person who was responsible for this particular ranch episode. And so they talked. And when I told all the people, here was the briefing I gave, here was the kind of responses we got from it. Some people ran with that and went and looked up, found the person writing the book and did other, things like that to try to get their name on the map and to say like, yeah, well, he used my sketches. That sketch was mine. This sketch was mine. And that's why I say I really dislike that. I mean, I get it that, you're trying to get some sort of notoriety for your work. And I understand that. But when it's a team of 70 viewers or a team of 50 viewers, you're part of the team. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a highlight reel. We're not doing highlight reels here. It's not about what a great catch you made or a great shot you made. You're part of a team. Be humble and be part of the team. Let the team shine in this. So we had some discussions with the production team, and I let them know what I was unhappy with, and they agreed with it. And so we came up with a new structure, which is what you saw today. Right. Mm-hmm. And we redid the same thing for the Rocky Mountain Ranch.
What is this? What is Rennes La Chateau and the priest and what secret he discovered? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about it. I don't know.
Whatever it is, it sounds pretty freaking creepy.
I couldn't tell you. I'd have to Google Rennes La Chateau to figure it out. But it's not unusual.
Was it during the opening? Was it during the opening ceremony of the Olympics or what? Because that was pretty horrifying too. But anyway, I digress.
I've heard that from people. I don't watch television, so I don't know. I didn't see that.
If you're Catholic, it was pretty sacrilegious. But
oh, really? Oh,
yeah. Well, it is what it is. It's not like they're burning books of Muhammad, the Quran or anything. So a priest discovered a secret and became very wealthy, I think, in the 1800s.
Okay, well, we won't be doing that. Not unless you get your own television show and you want to turn around and do it so it's going to be aired.
Which is pretty easy to do. That's pretty easy to do. I mean, I have my own television show.
Yes, you do.
Just on YouTube, and it's not on Instagram.
And it's
but
good.
for the right number, I'd do a show on the History Channel. I'd probably have to lose about 50 pounds, but that's okay.
I'm on the carnivore diet. You were on the carnivore diet for a while.
Yeah. I think that's when I'm rich.
I mean, that works. I mean, I've been doing it, but it's expensive, isn't it? Like I went today and I picked up all my steaks and crap for like the week.
You know what else works? You don't eat for 5 days. That works. I'm serious.
It doesn't work
day
for me.
3.
Yeah.
Day 3 is pretty hard, right? Because that's when the ghrelin is like, amping up. But at like day 4, you just have no energy. You're not hungry anymore.
Have you done this prolonged diet? There's a prolonged
No.
diet. I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's $180 a week, something like that. And it's a prolonged diet. And it is please don't anybody get mad if I'm quoting the wrong university. I think it's a UCLA physical science team that went through this thing, health science team, that they came up with these combinations of soups and other things like olives as a snack, but you only get like 3 or 4 olives. And the whole thing is packaged in a daily, you just open your box for the day, and it has what you have to have for breakfast, what you're going to have for lunch, or what you're going to have a snack before lunch, then what you're going to eat for.
Dave, I'm already down. I'm down to 1 meal. I just eat like an animal in that 1 meal. Yeah. I don't need to eat. I don't need to eat like very often.
My joke was going to be that I went today and bought all my steaks for the week, all my grass-fed beef and other stuff for the week. And then, I rang it up and it was like $360. I was like, Jesus. And I look at the cashier. I go, I'm gonna have to sell my car.
Unreal. Yeah.
I can't keep doing this,
Yeah, unreal. Like it's just unreal what's going on. Any comments on what's going on in so again, I was just there's somebody on Twitter, so that must be like, I mean, it's probably more legit than CNN, but still you have to take it with a grain of salt. But they were covering the tactics that the Russians had developed to evade drones and drone warfare. So now they're like, when they move at the fire team level. There's like 4 guys that move at a time, and into the trees using the brush and stuff like that.
The Depew wedge. Remember? They probably didn't teach that to you in that time.
No. Is that Depew, the guy who did like the study on kill ratios in World War II?
No. Well, he might have done that, but that was not what he was famous for.
It's like Colonel Depew or something like that.
General Depew became
maybe
Commander TRADOC, and in Trading and Doctrine Command back in the 70s, they formed the Depew wedge, and so that was what was taught. I mean, when I was a young infantry officer, that was one of the big things you had to learn how to do, was move in a wedge. So you had a
fire team wedge.
2 fire team wedges.
Yeah. They taught it. They just didn't call it the Depew wedge.
Well, they just called it a wedge, but it came from Depew and TRADOC. And I mean, I don't know how that would protect you from a drone with a thermal camera, but at least it's not providing the enemy looking at a thermal camera, looking at a large body. And that goes more along the lines of, like they were telling guys coming out of the Higgins boats, that 3 guys is a juicy opportunity, or 5 guys is a juicy target, and 1 guy is a waste of ammo. So if you're moving spread out in a wedge, and you're supposed to be in the wedges when you're moving, you're supposed to be 5 to 10 meters apart. So you got a fire team leader in the front, and you've got 4 other guys behind, and they're spreading the wedge, or 6 guys behind spreading the wedge, and you're 5 to 10 meters apart. So that's not necessarily a juicy opportunity anymore, as long as you maintain that kind of formation.
Right. And by moving in those like 4-man fire teams, you're also enforcing
5-man fire teams. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Russians are doing it. They're doing it in like 3 to 4s. It doesn't mean it's a fire team, but they're moving in like 3 to 4 person increments. But anyway, it's just interesting to watch how meanwhile, the U.S. military doesn't even, like, if I were a general in the U.S. military right now, I would be standing up drone battalions, right? Just like Heinz Guderian with like tank battalions. Not like this
Yeah.
French crap where you just have like a tank riding over along with your infantry. That's kind of the way we're organized now. We might have some drones that are attached to an infantry platoon. Like that's not the way.
Geez, I certainly
way.
hope that we're adapting, to the new battlefield. I mean,
We're not.
Granted, we haven't
We're
seen this kind of a battlefield in the last 20,
Right.
30, 40 some years, right? We haven't seen that kind of a battlefield. Certainly wasn't, our wars and during Cold War, most of them, we didn't see that in Korea. We didn't see it in, Vietnam. We certainly didn't see it during the Cold War and anything that anybody did in Central and South America. You can't move in a wedge formation through triple canopy jungle.
Mm-hmm.
You can try, but you're
but you're also not going to be spotted by drones either, right? Or you might.
That's true.
Maybe. I don't know if you can.
You could with LiDAR, but I don't know if they have LiDAR.
They do now. They do now.
Well, then you could with LiDAR.
Well, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, if they don't, they'll figure that out pretty fast. Right.
Yeah. LiDAR, they could shoot through the canopy and see you. They can unveil you with the shooting to the LiDAR. I don't know what the processing and reaction time with that would be. You know what I mean? I don't know what the real time intel on that would be with a drone looking down. I don't know how long it takes for the signal to get to, to the LiDAR processing. It's pretty complex, and it would have to be pretty.
But they're
speedy.
using it on cars now for like automation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So pretty fast.
It probably is pretty fast, especially at the DoD level. Spared no expense. Right. It'd probably be put whatever amount of money they needed to put to it to have that. But I know they can do that with LiDAR. You can't hide under triple canopy. I mean, shit, they can.
All right. I'm going to ask you a controversial question. So without going into any politics, what do you're an old, Ranger company commander, right? You've gotten your compass out, laid an azimuth, had a range card, drew a sector sketch. On that sector sketch, would you have missed that building that was across from Trump? Would you have missed that?
I would not have missed that. I would have walked in there as a Secret Service agent and gone, so who are we putting up over there? Or who's going to watch the tops of these roofs? And I would have also had people there, far enough ahead of the event to be able to see that ass fly a drone over the area. I cannot believe that, but I can tell you this. And then you watch that, you watch the interrogation, and I considered it an interrogation, and rightly so, of the director of the Secret Service. And I don't think she should have actually been allowed to resign. I think that there should have been more consequences other than you just lose your job. I mean that, because that was pure and simple. Either you're stupid. I mean, you have to be stupid to do something like that, and screw that up. And every Secret Service agent that was on the ground there, because as far as I'm concerned, if you're in that kind of a job, communication goes from the bottom up and the top down. And if from the bottom up, somebody's not saying, hey, we don't have anybody on that roof over there, right? Then you're all stupid. And then they ought to round you all up because you're just stupid.
Careful,
you're either stupid
careful,
or you're malevolent, and you're being stupid for a reason. Like you wouldn't have cared whether he got shot in the head, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't want to think that the Secret Service acts like that. I don't want to think that they do. I mean,
it could be. I think the campaign had been asking for increased resources for some time,
and been denied.
I believe there was a bill an proposed
agenda
legislation there's proposed legislation in Congress that would, I think, pull back some of that protection or withdraw the protection. And then also,
really?
Well, I don't look it up.
Just certain candidates.
Well, I mean, the president has to be protected, obviously. But and then I mean, even like RFK didn't
You
even.
should just throw him a pillow. He'll go sleep and take a nap somewhere. So,
Well, RFK didn't even have any protection at all until very recently, until after that happened. Then they gave him protection. So he didn't even have any Secret Service protection.
I would really love to, not being into that fold, but I would love to backtrack, for where the decisions were made that decided that presidential candidates and vice presidents don't need Secret Service coverage, or whether that decision was made or where somebody decided that the Secret Service don't need to be funded.
Yeah, it could be that.
To be capable of it. So where was the budget cut that made them drop off, detail agents? Because Secret Service comes out of the Treasury Department. Secret Service has both. They have both armed, uniformed Secret Service, and then they have the ones that work the actual presidential details. That there's two different branches of that, but they're both Secret Service. And then both of them get pretty much the same training, except I think that, the uniformed are more about just facility security, like the White House or something like that. But I would really love to be able to backtrack that and find out who is the brainiac that decided that they were going to, let me use a popular stupid ass term of defund the Secret Service so that they didn't have that many agents out there, to protect. Because I'm sure, like I said, I do not want to think that the service itself made some asinine, agenda decision to leave some people hanging while others got whatever they wanted. I just don't believe that we work like that. I just don't want to believe we worked like that. But I would be willing to bet you that somewhere back along the line, under the current administration or maybe some other place, a decision was made to defund or lessen the amount of money that the Treasury Department gets to put into the Secret Service. So therefore, we don't have enough agents to cover the people that need to be covered. We are in a world that is spinning on its head right now. We are deeply in a fourth turning, a destructive phase of global societal evolution. And if you can't figure that out, people don't understand that, then you're stupid. You're not ignorant. You're not uninformed. You're stupid. You're not paying attention to what's going on. What do you think this is? Like, this is how it should be right now?
Right, right. You see the petrodollar died on June 9th?
What happened?
The petrodollar died.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia.
It wasn't reported anywhere.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that it died. That probably is going to impact the U.S. dollar, which will be good for gold sales, I guess. But
yeah, but you can't do anything in gold if there's a collapse except steal it.
No, you can't. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for saying that. I've been saying that for decades. Like,
what are you gonna do? Like, lug it around?
Exactly.
Like armed bandits are taking it from people.
You're gonna go buy a Ford F-350.
Yeah, you need food and power. You need food, water, and power, and
that's
protection.
Right. I mean, what do you think you're gonna do? Fill up your Ford F-350 with diesel or fuel? What are you gonna do? Hand somebody a Krugerrand to pay for it? As soon as they see you take out one Krugerrand, they're going to assume you have a Ford F-350 full of a lot more. They're going to shoot you right in the face and go take all your gold. And so it will be. That's why I've just never done that. I mean, I get it that you think, people are thinking that they're going to do it and, it's a safe.
Well, then FDR confiscated gold from people. Remember that?
Yes, I do. I do. Well, I mean, I wasn't there and neither were you, but I do remember that happened and they just took it all. And, you had to turn it in. And if you didn't turn it in, you're going to be federally screwed, as they say. They're like,
I think they reimbursed you in
dollars,
right? But it's just at some like.
Yeah, you had to turn it in. You were compensated with paper. Sure. But
yeah,
you couldn't say, I'm not turning it in. I'm going to keep mine. So
well, you could try.
You could try, but if you got caught, if you got found out, it was a federal felony to have failed to do that. It wasn't just like, oh, we're going to slap your wrist. They were probably going to get to the point of confiscating property beyond just the gold itself. So yeah,
Any final words for the audience, David?
I love you guys, and I love you, Sean, and Mari.
I love
and
you too,
Gary.
brother.
I'm really happy you guys are there. I'm a little bit crazed. I just moved out of a condo into a house, and so I'm freaking exhausted. I'm so tired of packing up, moving, unpacking, setting up, packing up, moving again, so
You got time to catch up right after the show?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for supporting, John.
Yeah. We love you, amigo. Congrats on the move from
Yeah,
Marie.
thanks, brother.
And then Gary.
Take care, Gary and Mari. Love you guys.
All right. Good night, everyone. Just remember, you're watching Through a Glass Darkly Radio on United Public Radio.